Yo, novatos, thanks again for tuning in to yet another video. We are installing the Dominator FXRT fairing in this video. So I'm just showing you guys that the bracket itself goes on the outside of the gas tank. Depending on what you have, that might change. If you have JD, RWD, Hero to Zero or whatever, Hero to Villain. There's so many different mounting and brackets out there. So this does go on the outside. So here we are just installing it, just so we don't drop the bracket itself, because you got to install the bottom piece first. So this is just me trying to work that in there. Of course, you got to get the bracket and the gas tank, everything aligned so you could get this bolt through. And sometimes you just got to tap it a little bit with the hammer, right? It's nothing violent, just a little tap just to kind of guide it in there, and just to make sure it doesn't fall over while you're trying to install this piece. Now this piece is a little bit of a hassle. You do have, I mean, it's a really tight fitment. You can't really get your hands in there. And you also have your ABS lines that are running right next to that little bracket right there. But you got to get this on there just so you could have everything well seated. It just takes a little bit, you know, it takes a little bit of patience, but everything just kind of, you know, everything just flows in there as soon as you start getting these pieces in. So like I said, you want to install this first, get in there. I'm using, of course, a wrench. It's really tight, but you could do it. All right. And like I said, you have those lines. Try not to bend them. Try not to put a ding in those lines on top of that bracket, because it's gonna be bad news if you do. So like I said, it's a tight fit. I've already messed with this. I've installed it maybe 2 times just to kind of get to know the best way to install this. And I believe the way I have it set up for this install video, this is going to be probably the easiest and the best way for you to install this this fairing. Like always, just go left and right. Don't tighten one side. Remember, everything's supposed to be slightly loose. Like I said, I haven't installed that gas tank bolt. I haven't tightened that down at all, so everything's still loose. You can see it. I'm still finger threading the right side, and I'm loosening up because, like I said, you have those lines right on top of this bracket, and it's really tight. Don't force anything. Just take your time. It's you know, it's gonna take a little bit just to kind of get that and finesse that lower bracket in there. I'm moving it. I'm trying to push down on it because I'm not sure if that's what the case, but it looks like that helped out a little bit. Remember, both of the bolts are still loose. And once you finally get this bottom piece to take the bolts, of course, I already have Loctite on here, so you just tying these suckers down, crank it down, because everything else, as far as this bracket, everything else is going to fall into place. Like I said, you still have some adjustment at the neck of the bracket. You can see the couple bolts behind the headlight mounting area. Those are still loose, of course, and they should stay loose up until you mount the lower bracket. Now, I know I said lower bracket, but this is still considered the actual the upper bracket. The upper bracket, we have the lower bracket. The lower bracket connects to your engine mount, which are the bolts right behind my engine guard, the Mustache engine guard, and underneath the horn. You can see right here the horn. So like I said, everything was still loose. Now I'm going back and I'm making sure everything's nice and tight. Now that I have both of these bolts that took me a minute to put in, now that I have both of these bolts threaded and, you know, ready to get locked into place, this is when we start just making sure everything's nice and tight. And now that we have the lower piece connected, now we come up to the top and we just tighten that down. Of course, like I said, we still have some adjustment at right behind the light mount. You can see it right there, of course, right next to my wires. You still have 2 bolts left, and like I said, we're supposed to leave that loose so we could adjust the bracket, and you can see me moving it right there. So that's still loose. As far as the main bracket, the gas tank, and the lower piece, everything's tightened. Okay, so now we move on to the lower bracket of the fairing. This mounts directly on top of your engine mount, right next to your front jug head. You can see where I'm kind of placing it. We have to remove those bolts, but before we do that, we also have to remove the horn, just to kind of give us a little bit of space as far as getting the ratchet in there in the socket, of course. So I'm using the pipe. These bolts are super tight, of course, and it's in a weird, you know, area. So I'm using the pipe just to give me a little bit more leverage on breaking those bolts. Like I said, this is like in the tight spot, so this pipe, this method really helps when it comes to getting these bolts that are, you know, torqued down pretty heavy. Just be careful you don't scratch your front fender. All right, so let's go ahead and start installing the lower bracket. You want to Loctite everything, but at the same time, some of these parts are supposed to, you know, fit loose for a little bit. You still have to, I mean, there's minor adjustments in the lower bracket as far as left to right. There isn't much adjustment when it comes to, you know, vertically up and down, because it goes directly onto the engine mount, so you can't really adjust it. But just keep it loose so you could, you know, shift it left and right depending on how the fairing fits. Okay, so here I'm just showing you guys, hey, it's still loose, nothing's tightened as far as the lower bracket. Of course, the upper piece, that's already locked down with Loctite. That ain't going anywhere. We still have some adjustment at the other part of the mount, of course. So I already installed the bottom piece, like I said. I'm also pointing out that I used the spacer mainly because I wasn't happy with the gap between the lower bracket and the fairing, so that's why I went ahead and I did that. So you want to install the bottom piece first. You want to install the lower bracket first, and then we install the headlight area, or the main bracket. So just make sure this is seated first. That way you could line up these holes a little bit easier, because if you do it the other way, lining up these holes with the lower bracket could be a nightmare. Alright, now that the lower bracket is installed, the holes are lining up, everything's lined up, we go ahead and install the headlight ring. So if you have a headlight ring, this is where you would install that. Of course, Dominator did not send me a headlight ring. I ordered the LP6 bracket. I paid for the LP6 bracket, and I didn't get a headlight ring. So you just, you know, line up the holes. I mean, it's pretty simple. Once you have the lower bracket, I believe this is a little bit easier. And if you require a little bit of adjustment, I went ahead and I used spacers behind this headlight ring. Of course, I used 1/4-inch spacers just to kind of even out the area, the spacing between the gas tank and the rear of the fairing. So yeah, it's pretty simple, guys. It's pretty straightforward. There isn't any instructions as far as Dominator. You know, there isn't any. So I spent quite a bit of hours figuring out the best way to install this. And like I said, I believe this is, I'm repeating myself quite a bit, but I believe this is the best way to install it. Install the lower bracket first, and then you install the main piece, or the headlight area. So once you have this headlight ring installed and you have it, of course, to your liking, now you go back and you use red Loctite on that neck area of the bracket where it's adjustable behind the headlight, and that's pretty much it. All right, you just go back and, of course, apply Loctite, blue Loctite, once you have these parts painted and prepped and everything. Of course, this is just a mock-up, just to kind of get an idea how this is installed. Once you're satisfied with the way it looks, then you go back, of course, and then you apply the red Loctite once you have everything painted and finished. So thanks for tuning in to yet another video. You guys just stay out there, stay safe. I will be installing the lowers soon, so if you guys want to just subscribe to the channel and see if you guys want to see how that's installed. All right, stay out there, stay safe, don't believe everything you read, life's a risk, get out there and ride. Later.